Good evening, and welcome to the November 25th, 2014 work session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just from me, a very quick announcement. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, but in doing so, I want to remind you that the weather is very likely to be incredibly nasty tomorrow and into the next day, perhaps. Please drive very carefully. Make sure if you're flying somewhere that the planes are leaving and coming down again in the appropriate manner. Please look in on any of your neighbors or friends who might be aged or handicapped or have small children. Make sure that they have enough food and enough to drink and that they're warm enough. It's going to be very difficult out there. Anyone else?
Sure. If you're stuck at home, then it might be a good time to go online and check out the Energize program. If you own any property in Ossining, you may have an opportunity to get an energy efficiency upgrade. That goes primarily, it started out with residential, and now it has expanded to commercial property and nonprofit properties as well. So learn more about it at ossining.energizeny.org. And I will also give a plug to the December screening of for the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series. The December screening is called Inequality for All. It's a documentary. It's actually very funny, which is good because the topic is how the political and economic structure that we're living in today has contributed to a widening wealth gap. As disparate as it has been since the Great Depression. And so it should be a really interesting discussion with some terrific panelists. Every month we get together at 6:30, December 4th, at the Bedars Theater in the Ossining Library. And as always, it is free to the public. We'll watch the movie, and then we'll have some question and answer and discussion with panelists. So please join us. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you. We have a lengthy agenda this evening, many items of interest. The first one is an update on the Indian Brook water treatment plant, the generator installation. Andy Tees is here to introduce our guest and to explain the status of the project.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the Indian Brook generator project. This project is a generator that the board approved, and we had this generator designed. I think the lump sum contract price was $897,000. It's a 1,000 kW generator. The original thought was we would go with a 750, and we talked about this 6 months ago, 750 kW, and we decided to go for the 1,000 because we know that we need to expand at the filtration plant in the future. We didn't want to put two generators in. So we're doing it once and we're doing it right. About a month and a half ago, I received word from Lindstar Engineering, who I'll have come up here, Gary Lynch, who is the owner of Lindstar Engineering, that there was a field modification that was needed. It is a change order that's required, and Gary's going to talk about how this change order was found and what we need to do about it. So without further ado, Gary's going to come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Gary, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. Lindstar Engineering is a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection firm in Pleasantville, and we've been doing mainly retrofit work for municipalities for the last 30 to 40 years, all in this area, Westchester, for the county, and for you also for many years. One of our biggest problems doing retrofit work or modifying existing work is the unforeseen. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard it, but our biggest problem is when we go with underground work. We usually try and investigate as best we can without incurring extra costs and delays to the client, to you. In operating facilities that can't be shut down, there's certain limitations we have to work around, and we usually go by the drawings and any information that we have around us that we can put this together with. And we found that to be the best method in the past, and it's worked fairly well. There are those times, like this time, when you start digging in the ground and the drawings are not the way they're supposed to be, and you have to even take some soundings, or we had a code 53. I forget exactly. I wasn't the design engineer on the job, I'm sorry, but some things just don't match up. And once they started opening up the ground, they found out the duck bank was much bigger than they expected, much bigger than we expected it to see, and it should have been split into a series of smaller duck banks. And that's what we predicated our design around. They did further investigations to see what they were, what was together, and that's where this change order all came about, and that's what it was from. The unfortunate part about it is, if we had done this, if we had dug up the ground ahead of time, which we normally don't do, or have you do, or have a contractor do, is very time-consuming and costly, and found this ahead of time, we basically still would have incurred the same costs. You still have to modify the duck bank the way we instructed the contractor to do it. And you say, well, it's a change order, it's extra, they usually, incur additional costs doing that way, and we pay more for it. In view of the fact that his price is almost right on our estimate of the work, we don't feel that is happening here. So we feel that wasn't really a bad way to approach it this time. So basically what happened was, he started digging, and we found something different. We had to adapt our design to it. We didn't lose much time in the project, and we're hoping that you can improve this so we can go forward. Are there any questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had a question. I'd actually had a chance to talk to Andy about this. Now, I guess there were two things that you found. One was the issue of stuff underground, in which you had seen drawings that didn't reflect what you found when you dug things up, right?
That's correct.
Right, but then wasn't there there's another part of this where the power source comes into the building?
There is an issue where it comes into the building, because once it was opened up and investigated, after we found this problem, it turns out that was a utility box. And it's a very oddball case that I haven't seen ever, to be honest with you. It's really inaccessible. It's a utility box, so we have no jurisdiction over it, so we weren't supposed to open it anyway. And it's just total utility code violations galore, and it would have to have been touched and changed anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess with the box part, I mean, as a matter of course, I guess I would have expected that if you weren't able to actually observe what was there, I mean, you've never faced a situation like this before. Is that what you're saying, or
I don't think I've ever seen this type of a situation, to be honest with you. I always
Okay.
come upon things. We deal with plants that were built in the 1900s, and you always find oddballs, and this is just one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can understand the excavation part. I guess the other part, I can understand why you wouldn't want to go in there,
we
because,
can't.
well, no, but I'm just saying that
Utility.
if you can't see what's in there, and only Con Ed can know what's in there, I guess I would have made the call to Con Ed. I mean, if you're going to do an engineering study and you're going to put the plans together, I would imagine you'd really want to know everything that you can. Obviously, you mentioned the thing underground. I can understand that, and I understand that I guess this other thing is troubling me, just that, I mean, I guess I would have gone the extra, I mean, I'm in consulting, that's something that I do, so I like to see people take that extra step. If there's things that you can't visually see or understand, that I guess I would have expected you to make the call to Con Ed and go in there and look at this thing, since you really didn't know it was in there, right?
I could understand what your reasoning is,
Mm-hmm.
but we really can't do that. First of all, the equipment that's in the box, Con Ed understands and knows, because they put it there. How many years ago was I believe it was the 80s? Mid-80s, I believe it was. That's in there, they call them the plats. They can look them up now by computer, all the field guys have laptops. They can look all this information up. What they don't have is what's your property. They have everything that's their property. That little box is their property, what's inside it. The box is yours, and what's inside is their property. It's called the current transformer cabinet. And the wiring that goes from that box back to their transformer is yours. You own it, it's on your property. they have no jurisdiction over that, and they have no records of that. They don't keep those. They just have, if you look at their drawings, they have a little box, a little triangle in it, there's your transformer on the Con Ed service layout, and then they show a line on the drawing, and there's a little box inside the building, and it's just a little sketch like a box on the drawing, and a piece of paper that you have. It means nothing in the real world until you go there and open it up.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. That was just a concern to me. I don't know, I guess, you know, with projects of, or when you deal with plants that are of these ages and all this work that was done 20 or 30 years ago, you know, it doesn't sound like you can really trust.
No.
I guess, I don't know, I mean,
A lot of it is that
you've been
farm.
doing this for a long time, but, you know, I deal with Con Ed as a residential customer, and frankly, I don't really trust them either. But I'm just, I guess, you know, I hope that there's a lesson learned for you in this process. I realize we're gonna have to spend the money anyway, but that's just my perspective on it. Thank you for your help, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. So at the end of this, we'll have a new set of drawings with things as they actually are, so that the next time something happens, some poor engineer's not gonna come in here and say, those guys, I don't know what the hell they did.
Exactly.
Right,
And
so
that's
this is
what
gonna
our
be fixed
as-built
for going
drawings,
forward.
It's in the specifications. The contractor has to provide them to us to review.
Okay,
We accept them, they sign them, and we give them to you.
and so we'll have them on file, hopefully online as well. And this way, this particular problem won't reoccur. Good,
Agreed.
thank you.
We hope the whole problem won't recur. The generator issue that we had last year,
Yeah, well, that's-
none of that should ever happen again. Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, we're all set for a resolution for next meeting.
Yep.
And for the funds to be transferred from.
Right, we saw you.
Oh,
We're
you're
all
all
set.
set? Okay.
We're all set,
Yeah.
brother.
Great.
Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving, my friend. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the village has been approached, and our manager of downtown economic development, Ingrid Richards, has been in contact and been working with the O'Neill Group with respect to the potential redevelopment of the former village-owned DPW parcel. We've had 2 meetings with the O'Neill Group so far, and they are at a point now where they would like to come to you and present their ideas and see what your thoughts are. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ingrid.
Good evening.
Evening.
Evening. So, just to recap a little bit, tonight the Board of Trustees will listen to a presentation from the O'Neill Group that will lay out a conceptual plan for the old DPW site. Again, as background for the board, the old DPW site consists of 4 parcels totaling approximately 3.4 acres and is surrounded by Main Street to the south, Central Avenue to the north, and Water Street to the west. This site is located in our planned waterfront zoning district. This district was primarily created to promote transit-oriented development. Again, a couple of points on transit-oriented development. TODs are built within a quarter to a half mile of a transit stop, 5 to 15 minutes, designed so that pedestrians and cars may coexist, reduces overall auto dependency, diversify housing opportunities for a variety of all ages and income levels. If this project is built, it will achieve transit-oriented development in the village of Ossining and will build a sustainable foundation for a dynamic and emerging community. TODs have been a key tool in assisting similar historic Hudson River communities in the revitalization of their downtowns by attracting residents who seek desirable spaces to work, live, and play. These residents are potential consumers who will purchase goods and services provided by our local businesses, thereby sustaining the business. Again, this site, if developed, is in keeping with the village's execution of its economic development strategic objectives to provide attractive, high-quality housing that will attract young professionals and empty nesters to live in our historic village. Without further ado, we'll start off with Mr. Greg McWilliams, and hopefully Mr. Lewis Kaufman will join. Thank you.
Thank you.
Best to set it up on this side?
I want to make
you need-
sure, maybe against the wall.
Yeah.
Just next to you, so that the camera can look at it.
My name is Greg McWilliams. I'm a
Welcome.
local architect, and I'm working with the O'Neill Group on the conceptual design of this project. I might add that Finn O'Neill and Lou Kaufman of the O'Neill Group, they're in transit, they're on the New York Thruway, they're caught in traffic. They would have normally made the preamble and also conclusion, with me doing a presentation in the middle. So here I am, I'm making the presentation.
Wait a few minutes, we can,
No,
you're okay?
That's fine.
They can do the preamble and the conclusion when they get here.
There we go. I have some handouts. These are 11 by 17 color prints of the site plan, a typical building plan, and a conceptual elevation.
Cool.
Matt, can you see that?
You see that?
Thank you, my brother.
Is that the same thing that we're looking at?
Yes. Okay, starting off with the site plan, the first sheet. As everyone knows, this site is basically a gulch all the way down. It's like a canyon. And it's bisected by the Sing Sing Hill, which pretty much comes down the middle. The upper half of the site is very steep, rocky slopes on each side, bounded by Central Avenue on the north and Main Street on the south. The lower portion of the site is relatively flat, and on the corner of Water Street and Central, there's an existing DPW building, which, by the way, the building on that corner is pretty much the location where that is, where the present building is. This building is 225 feet long, excuse me, by 62 feet wide, as is the other building, but the existing DPW building is about 225, but it's only 50 feet in width. So this superimposes, it's pretty much the area of it. The other side, the Main Street side, is presently being used for recyclables and stuff like that by the DPW. Our concept is to maximize the benefits that we could get with this zone, with all the, I don't know if credits is the word, but with 10% affordable housing, also a number of other things, including creating public space, recreation space, making capital improvements, the cleanup of the site, mitigating things for the Philbrook and a number of other things. So our proposal was 108 units in 2 equal buildings of 54 units per building. The total bedroom count would be 70 one-bedroom units and 38 two-bedroom units. Each building is a 4-story block of apartments over a level of on-grade parking. The parking we provided on site totals 127 cars. That's based on 1 car for 1-bedroom unit and 1.5 cars for the 2-bedroom units. Excuse me. The site plan, as you see it, we're proposing 2 buildings on either side of the Kilbrook, and they pretty much respect the setbacks. The 4-story buildings over parking, and the intent is that these buildings would face each other. The stream, or the Kilbrook, between the 2 of them, we've developed a walkway on either side with benches, nice light fixtures, pavers and all that sort of thing, so it's a really nice promenade walkway. The one on the south side, as you see, goes upstream, and eventually that comes up to Central Avenue, where all the sewer improvements are, and there's going to be a walkway by the village up to that point. Keller and Sessions did a plan indicating, excuse me, a proposed walkway that would come down to where you see a walkway crossing the river, kind of at an angle. just before, I guess it's just east of our lower building. Our proposal is to put in this walkway. We'd hook up on the underside of the bridge with the village walkway. We'd probably eliminate the one that crosses the stream because the way it's designed right now, the steps, you're going up like 30 feet. It's kind of ridiculous. It's something to be very hard to traverse. So by taking that out, we'd be continuing the walkway down, becomes a promenade in front of the building, and comes all the way down to Water Street. Where it hits Water Street would have a little bit of a plaza with some benches, possibly some public sculpture, and we can certainly enhance the Water Street sidewalk as it starts to make the transition over towards the train station. The buildings themselves, we're proposing for recreation for the site, roof decks up on top where it'd be passive recreation, sitting and stuff like that. There's a nice view up there of the river. And also, we have space in the building for an exercise room, a meeting room for the people. And in addition to that, along this promenade, which turns into the walkway, we have an area where we have picnic tables and seating, and there'll be barbecues and stuff like that. So that's some outdoor space, excuse me, for the patrons. The buildings themselves, we have about 5,000 square feet. That would be a community room, a recreation, physical fitness space. And in addition to that, we have storage cubicles on every floor for every apartment. Basically a 4x7 cage, so to speak, so they have storage for that. The parking and the way we've sited the buildings is, if anybody's ever seen this, it's basically a 3 to 4 story bluff looking up towards Main Street. Okay, to put the buildings over against that street, you're gonna lose about 3 floors of space. You're literally, technically, you can only get 20 feet from the property line. You'd be literally filling in a crevice. Not desirable. There'd be a lot of construction with a yield of not so much in terms of what you get for the building. So by pulling the buildings away from that and having them parallel, we think we're creating a nice space with a walkway down through. We're creating some space away from that bluff, so we do have views. And also, excuse me, as an important item, by doing that, we're able to get on-grade parking that goes around the building for like emergency vehicles, maintenance vehicles that can service the trail that goes up to Central Avenue and everything else. So the total parking of 127 cars is, as I said, underneath the buildings and this on-grade parking as well. We are proposing a little cross bridge that comes back over here. There was one at one point. In fact, you can see the abutments out over there where there was, but no longer is there. But we think it's a good idea to have that. Trucks can't really do this because with a 9-foot ceiling height in the garage, you really can't get large vehicles. But you know, smaller vehicles and also just traffic, everyday traffic, it's a good continuous flow. That's pretty much the overview. Also, excuse me, I'm getting over laryngitis.
I just have a question
Yes.
about what I just see on the front page.
Yes.
How do fire trucks approach the north building?
This building right here.
Yeah.
We're 20 feet from Central Avenue.
Okay, so that takes care of that side. What about the other side, facing the kill?
Okay.
From Water Street.
On
Well-
Water Street, obviously, we have the driveways coming in to a certain point. I mean, we're the right-of-way to the property line, which is about 10 feet, and then 20 feet here, so we're 30 feet from the curve. Here, we'll probably have, this has not obviously been shown to the fire department yet, but we can fool around with curb radiuses and stuff like that, where trucks can get over here, and possibly even make this a heavy duty where they can do 3-point turns.
Okay.
So that's our intent. The buildings will be sprinkled, obviously.
Yeah.
So we feel that there's pretty good access for the fire department.
Green buildings?
As much as possible. This developer, they do some lead buildings. Generally speaking, it's, you know, all the appliances would be NYSERDA. They use green products when they can, but they're certainly not going to be lead buildings.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
If you're on Main Street
Yes.
and you're looking towards the project,
Right.
what do you see? Are you seeing the roof, or are you seeing one of the levels? How
Well-
far? Because it's down below.
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm standing on Main Street, looking at your project, what am I looking at?
Okay, there's about a two-story grade change down here. As you go up the hill, the red house that's up there,
Yeah.
up here, it's probably 40 feet. The building's gonna be about 48 feet high. There's gonna be one level of parking, 4 levels of apartments, figure 10 feet floor to floor. So when you're over in here, you're still not gonna be looking at the roof. Up here, you're gonna be looking at the upper story.
You are.
Yes. Over here, you're gonna be looking at the building itself.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to just continue with the second sheet. Each floor would have 14 apartments, and as I said, this is generally predominantly one-bedroom units. I don't know if you can read the schedule for the reduced scale over there, but there's basically 9 one-bedroom apartments and 5 two-bedroom apartments. It's an elevator building, 2 elevators. There'll be building services and compaction, stuff like that in every floor. There will be a central area for storage cubicles, as I said. The apartments, we're proposing to have little balconies on them, similar to like an Avalon or one of them, big enough to get a couple chairs out there, but you know, they maybe project out about 4 feet. And the purpose of these balconies is there really is a good view looking at the river over this way. There's no way these buildings can be turned 90 degrees, just not practical for the site. But by having them almost 90 degrees to the building, everybody can come out and have a skew view of the river. These balconies also are going to be self-contained. The units will be self-contained. In terms of their HVAC units, there'll be a little outside closet that's vented directly, and that also is part of the balconies. We have them all the way around. So all the units would have that. The units range from about 730 square feet to about 1,178, I think it is. The one-bedroom apartments are pretty standard. They're very efficient, and they're the smaller of size range, as I said. They have one bathroom. All the 2-bedroom units, which range in size primarily because they're wrapped around stairwells and stuff like that, they have 1.5 bathrooms. Okay. The third floor, this is the type of aesthetics that the O'Neill Group produces in their projects. By no means rubber stamp, but this is a conceptual elevation which this building can be. It's 4 stories of living units over a garage space, and this is the length of what our building is. It'll be made up of stucco, hardy plank, some brick veneer, and things like that. It won't just be a flat roof. There'll be some gable ends. Obviously, it's flat behind there because we'd like to have a roof terrace up there. But this is the general character of what the building would look like on one of the long elevations.
I see little tiny people on the roof.
Yeah.
What's going on up on the roof?
Well, we'll have a pass system and benches up there. In fact, there'll probably be more at the river end.
Okay.
I don't think we'd have the whole roof as open to the public, probably the other half towards the river.
Is there any consideration of a green roof or blue roof?
That is a consideration. Okay. Mr. Lou Kaufman just arrived from O'Neill.
Welcome.
So if the board has any questions of me, I can certainly answer them. Otherwise, I'll let Mr. Kaufman say his words.
Sounds like a plan.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry, I did not anticipate everybody running to the highways because of the storm, and I suspect that there's no water or milk or bread in the supermarkets either.
It's that seasonal Alzheimer's. Oh my God, there's going to be white stuff falling from the sky. What is that? Ah!
My
It's
name
really
is Lou
silly.
Kaufman. I'm with the O'Neill Group. I hope I brought enough.
They're all the same.
I do have a slick PowerPoint, but I don't have time to set it up, so we're going to do the old-fashioned one.
Thank you. Yeah. There's lots of these now. Oh, they're redefining luxury. What's Webster going to say?
Okay, so my name's Lou Kaufman. I'm with the O'Neill Group. We are developers in the tri-state area. We have properties in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. This brochure gives you an idea of what some of our projects are completed and underway. Greg has already provided you the proposal for the DPW site. Some of the finishes for that project are in a good barometer would be the project we just completed, and I'll get to in a minute. That's in Rochelle Park, right by Paramus, New Jersey. I'm not sure how much Greg went into the exterior of the site. We proposed a greenway trail, elevated with two pedestrian bridges as well as a vehicle bridge. We plan on investigating any contamination other than what's been discovered, and it will be remediated by Con Edison. We are fairly experienced with brownfield sites. We are in the process of, we're completing the cleanup according to the DEC standards in Poughkeepsie. Let me go right to the brochure. First is the proposal for the Ossining site, so you all have a copy. The next site that we are about to begin is a 15-acre brownfield site in Poughkeepsie, New Jersey. It's right on the Hudson River.
You're talking about the One Duchess Avenue?
One Duchess Avenue.
And it's Poughkeepsie, New York, right?
Poughkeepsie, it's both in the city and the town.
Okay. You mentioned New Jersey in there, that's why.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, you're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't know
Well,
there
at
was a
least I didn't say
Poughkeepsie, New Jersey.
Connecticut.
Okay.
It's already been cleaned up. We're finishing the cap on it. We're about to complete the approval process for 384 units. The building this Building D concept for the roof gardens and things like that is one of the buildings in that new project.
Is Poughkeepsie, when you did the brownfield
Cleanup
remediation
program.
there, cleanup there, was that working with Con Ed? Was that
No, that's,
NYSEG or?
it was private.
You
It was
took
done
care
by
of
a prior owner. It was a lumber yard that did pressure treating. So there was chromium and copper and arsenic in the ground. We removed all the hot spots, and we are now tapping it.
I don't know if Valerie or Richard or Lee could enlighten us more. Working with Con Ed in this kind of a situation, what would we anticipate that process would look like, and what's the timeline that the developers?
Family Crest.
Will be the developers' role, will be
Yeah,
Con Ed's role, what's the
another.
municipality's role, what would be anticipate there?
Valerie can jump in, but I think once we've identified,
My understanding,
Can you come to the microphone, Sal, just because they can't hear you on TV? Thank you.
Sal Carrera,
Welcome, Sal.
Hi,
my
Sal.
pleasure being here. My understanding from Con Ed, and I've been in touch with them for the past 8-9 months, and we have a complete copy of the contamination throughout the whole site that Con Ed put together via one of their own estimators. My understanding is twofold. One is that they are fully responsible for their aspect of the contamination that they have to clean up. The other part, that being the broker of record for this transaction, is that I would not want my client to get involved in a piece of property other than what Con Edison will be cleaning up, so we would probably be looking towards a phase 2 on the rest of the site and the buildings. The buildings we've gone through a number of times already. There's asbestos tiles on the roof and asbestos in the buildings, and have no idea basically over the past year of the construction of the sewer line with all the trucks and equipment that's been laying there and going back and forth, if there's any minor or major contamination to the soil because it's not paved and it just goes into the ground. That's something that a phase 2 would take a look at. Con Edison, my understanding, my conversation with them, they do it 2 ways. Number one is that they are basically waiting for a developer to be chosen by the Village of Ossining, so that then they would fast track this in order to clean it up. I could understand, their situation with finances, that they don't want to just go clean something up when you don't have someone ready, willing, and able to build on the site. The other part of it is that once the developer is chosen, they would work in conjunction with that developer to do one of 2 things. One would be to work with them and give them specifications that they can go do it while the buildings are coming down, okay? And/or they would just go do it themselves and then give us a DEC certificate that all the contamination that they were fully responsible for has been taken care of, and hopefully with regards to, and I'm hoping that the minor situations with asbestos and roof tiles and cement that was used in the construction of these buildings, decades ago, would be, something that we'd have to get a complete write-off on. But my last conversation with Con Edison was that they would not mind talking to a developer to see if they would go do it, and they would pay them to go do it with their specifications that has to be done, and/or they would go do it and give the Village of Ossining a complete satisfaction of the cleanup that they are responsible for.
Thank you.
Question?
Go?
Yeah. Funding. How is this project being funded?
Well, we initially fund all of our projects. We finance the entire brownfields cleanup in Poughkeepsie, and then we use traditional permanent financing, construction and permanent.
Okay.
We have a long history of that. We have a sister company that is a construction general contractor, does high-rises in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and metropolitan area, and it's very standard. We just let me just quickly go through the Poughkeepsie site, which is called 1 Dutchess Avenue, and the only reason I pointed out is the site plan is interesting, but more importantly, just past the site plan is the park that we're going to construct on the Hudson, and with a greenway trail. And although obviously the park and greenway trail that we would put in the DPW site is site specific, many of the elements that we intend to put there are here. Landscaping benches. We're going to clean up the brook and things of that nature. So. And we'll have a lovely greenway trail walking alongside, with public access and things of that nature. We're also going to have a pedestrian bridge between the 2 buildings, as well as a pedestrian bridge to cross over the river, the brook, over near the aqueduct.
So you would connect, we have a walkway through the, what's it called?
They acknowledge where.
Through the Killbrook, that connects up to the piece that Avalon gave us, right, doesn't it? Kurabucky? Will this connect up to Kurabucky?
No. This is connecting to where the Killbrook sewer line relining project that right now goes, it stops at Central Avenue and goes up the steps. They'll pick up where it stops at Central Avenue and bring it down to Water Street.
Down to the Water Street. Okay, that's the part that we're currently missing.
Right.
Yeah, we're missing, yeah.
And we
Yeah.
will do that.
Okay, you would do that. That's
will
good.
do that.
Somebody should. That's good.
Yeah.
And so it would be an easement for public access?
Yes. The other portion that I think might interest you in in that portion of 1 Dutchess Avenue is, I believe it's the last page, and that shows you some of the outdoor amenities that we're putting in there and that we intend to include in the project here. Moving on, we own a property, 7-acre, 450,000 square foot mill in Connecticut. It's a historic register. We have historic tax credits, both federal and state. It was the largest cotton mill in the United States when it was operating. We are going to incorporate into the plans itself a museum for the area describing Taftville, because it was a company town. It grew up around the mill. And we'll have the photographs, and we actually have it operating to this day. In the lower portion of the mill, there's the Shetucket River has a canal, runs through our building. There's a hydroelectric plant there that's been operating for 100 years, and that will stay. And we're going to have artifacts both of the cotton mill and also of the hydroelectric plant. And it's a beautiful site. I didn't give too much, but I gave you the renderings of what it looks like front and back, so to give you an idea of what it looks like. That will ultimately have 314 units. The first phase is 247, which we're about to begin.
Have you seen the Brandreth Pill Factory building?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
We look all the time, so. Give me the address.
What do you think? You think you could restore it?
They haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you should go
It's down the
look.
block from where you've been looking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a block away.
As I said, 450,000 square foot. Each one of the floors in Panema Mill is 70 feet by 700 feet. It's all cleaned up. There was brownfields contamination in that. We cleaned that all up. It's broom clean, and it looks like a football field indoors. It's amazing.
Yeah,
There's 2 towers, as you can tell.
Yeah.
One of the towers is going to house this museum.
that's great.
Very nice.
The next project that I have in the brochure is Park Terrace. Park Terrace is a project, 4 stories over parking, similar to what we proposed here. It's 57 units. We just completed it, opened it up in late September. We're over 50% rented already. I have just given you some of the apartment features that you can see some of the finishes we give on these type apartments, stainless steel appliances, luxury finishes, and things of that nature. This exists. This is not a factory. The community amenities similar to what we're proposing here, a wellness center.
Well,
I know that I call that a sauna and a steamer. A gym, and there's a community room with a bar, supply your own liquor. And there's a theater room with, seating and things of that nature. We have a
Oh,
library.
these are all amenities for the residents.
These are all
Yeah.
amenities for the residents.
Right.
Then there's, of course, the amenities that will be outdoors on this property, which is similar to the amenities we showed you for 1 Dutchess Avenue in Poughkeepsie.
will there be a bar in the building you want to build here?
Bob,
In the,
control yourself.
in the plans that you have here,
Important issues.
there's an easement for public access to the Greenway path. And I see there's a picnic area on the,
Yeah.
that end as well. Is that picnic area intended for public use, or is that intended for resident use? I can't tell from here the topography of what would be encouraged.
That is a detail that we haven't really discussed, the precision of the buffers around the walkway, around the Greenway Trail. And how important is that to the village is what we're, we've given off a 2.5 acre park on the Hudson to Poughkeepsie. So that's certainly up for discussion, whether the public easement includes that picnic area or not. There certainly will be buffers around it. I mean, it's not going to be limited to the 12-foot, walkway. And there's, of course, plantings, whether they be trees or indigenous plantings. They say native plantings, but of course, that's crabgrass oftentimes. But we're not looking for that. We're looking to have more of a natural buffer, and that's what we did. I think that a good barometer is the Park Terrace. As I said, just opened. Many of the finishes we would prepare here, and it's really doing quite well. Very, very pleased with way it's being absorbed. Then I just threw in, just for the heck of it, a small project that we built in Wappingers Falls. It's 20 units, it's twin townhouses, you know, 2 in each building, got a common wall, individual units, small but very efficient, 100% rented, basically since we opened up. The last project I think you'll find a little interesting. It's called Empire View. Empire View was in East Orange, New Jersey. East Orange, New Jersey is neighbors Newark, New Jersey. And the area where we went in, we took a little bit of a risk, I would say. It was a vacant, abandoned condominium, 12-story building. We gutted it, renovated it, created 150 apartments, sold out in 12 months. Revitalized the entire area, created a little renaissance in that little area for East Orange. People mimicked us and used our business plan, and many of the buildings on South Mon and the variety of the streets over were completely revitalized. So we're very proud of that too, and you know, did very well. You know, selling out in 12 months, we're very pleased by that as well. So that is a sampling of what we've done, and these are very real and these are very local. And we have the concepts. We have you know, local talent. We always use local trades. We create jobs in the community.
Do you build union or not?
Depends. We have what they call an open shop. Depends on what needs to be and what doesn't need to be. It's not, you know, it's not always union, but if it has to be union, it can be.
Do you guys use contractors who were enrolled in the New York State approved apprenticeship program to bring young people into the building trades?
We're a minority-owned company, and we utilize all of that. In particular, the sister company, the general contractor. I'm not. Do we have that in place? The apprenticeship program? Yeah, through our subcontractors.
You're a minority-owned company.
Right, woman. A woman owns it.
Oh, okay, because O'Neill, it's my family name, and I don't.
Okay, well, there are women named O'Neill. So,
Yes, we have plenty of female O'Neills, but we don't consider them a minority in my family.
well, they consider that in New York State.
Yeah. Rather dominant they are.
Any other questions? You have questions?
I had to ask. I see my own family crest on the thing.
Yeah, I guess I would, this is probably the first proposal that I've seen that, for this property that, you know, that I think, you know, has some depth, and you've obviously put a lot of thought into it. The fact that you've handled brownfield sites numerous times to literally reinvent areas is encouraging. So certainly like what I've seen, and you know, look forward to, you know, obviously talking to my fellow trustees about this and seeing, you know, where we're going to go from here, I guess. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest in Ossining.
Just one last thing. We have put a great deal of effort and time, and we were hoping that the village would entertain a 90-day exclusive period so that we could invest a lot more time and money. We would investigate the brownfields, if there's any other further contamination with the buildings or beyond the Con Edison commitment. We would prepare that report for your review, and we could determine what's a fair and equitable price. So I was hoping that you guys would entertain that so that we can invest some more time and money into it.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you so much
something
for
we
your
will
time.
have to discuss.
Well, actually,
Yes.
I have a few questions, and I have something else to say, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just a little bit of background. This is the second developer that has come to. Sorry, so this is our second developer that has come to the front of the village board in regards to this property. We did not ask for any. We haven't solicited any RFPs. There's somebody that probably you're aware of the property. So the drawings that we just got shown has nothing to do that we are proven or any of that source. And my God, actually, I was impressed. And I'm a little surprised that I said that I was impressed. Actually, looking at the drawings, there was a lot of detail put in. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, especially the finishes. I did have a couple questions in regards to the parking space. you showed, in the renderings, I guess you're showing something that looks like glass. Is that the intent?
On the ground
On the ground
floor.
floor?
If you look at the ground floor there.
you look
you'll
at the
see
bottom-
The windows.
That'd be open, there'd probably be some metal grating, some
Okay.
sort of a metallic screen,
All right,
but it's basically open, it's not glass.
okay, all right.
That's the parking level, right?
That's the parking lot.
So it just looked like glass when you do the rendering, it just looked
Yeah,
like
but then all
glass.
that carbon monoxide is terrible if you glass the thing in there.
Yeah, I think so. The 90 days, and I can just speak for myself at this point, we do have another developer looking into this property with a bigger eye, so to speak, to two properties actually, and I'm not sure if you were aware or not. So we actually have to think, at least I will have to think about this in greater detail and see what is best for the village and what is best for at this time of day. So, but that's something that I guess we can discuss that later on. And then we
I
can let
was
you
under the
know.
impression there was actually an RFP on this particular site.
No.
There have been in the past several.
There was in the
of
past, but no within, I've been on the board for 3.5 years, so no within 3.5 years.
Let me just say one thing, Mr. Kerr, thank you. Yes, there have been RFPs out. We don't have one currently out, but as you
Correct.
know, as part of my
Yes.
role, we do
Correct.
have
Yes.
deep connections with brokers, and we do talk to them about the properties in the village. So this is ongoing through the off,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
the
No, I'm
Office
aware
of
of that.
Downtown Economic
Yeah.
Development. So I just wanted everyone, it to be on the record that we do that. Also, we do have some, Mr. Carrera, who, we do have a lot of the developers looking at the old RFPs to determine, the boundaries of what the board and the village would want to see. So that's how these potential developers come to the board.
And just to add on to that, there's a lot of vetting that takes place prior to coming to this board. So we have received numerous phone calls over the last number of years from various developers asking lots of different questions about this particular site, and Ingrid has shown the site numerous times to a lot of different developers. It's only the ones that are ready to really move forward that Ingrid has brought back before this board.
Correct, thank you.
I think if the board is interested, if you could, Valerie, I assume you have it, if you could supply us with the last RFP that was out so that we can see what the previous board had thought of as appropriate for this. I assume that you followed it fairly closely. I recognize the number of units as coming from that.
Zoning compliant.
Yeah.
With bonuses, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the, another
Yeah.
question I was gonna have, is
Yeah.
whether you were gonna need any variances, any kind of accommodations.
No, we're trying to come in variance-free, maybe some.
Variance-free.
We have worked on this plan for 9 months. I saw the presentation from last week. And with all due respect with regards to the Main Street site, that I think the developer was really interested in doing it. Being in a public official for 12 years as the Director of Real Estate for Westchester County, a project like that, this board would have to go out with an RFP like they did with the Stag Group, which I sold for the village to the Stag Group people. DPW was done at the same time. It's been vacant for over 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. And now that we have some interest, but we would be interested at an RFP for the Main Street site also, but there's no RFP out for that, and that goes into a comprehensive plan. What we're concentrating on here is not the big picture for Austin, but taking a piece at a time and not putting all our eggs in one basket and saying, we want the Main Street site because you can build 200 apartments there. And we'll do you a favor and we'll do something with the DPW site. We're concentrating on what's been out in the industry now for numerous years. And as you know, with the Stag Group, that was vacant for 16 years, and that took me close to a year to put together to sell also. So putting aside the Main Street site, I would like this board to concentrate on what's in front of us, and that is the DPW site, that an RFP has been submitted. okay? It's now been answered by some interested parties, whereas in the past, the last person that was interested was the Capelli Ginsburg Group, and that didn't happen. So we want to just move forward, concentrating on that. When and if you put an RFP out for the Main Street site, that'll be up to, you know, every builder that's out there to concentrate and come in with a proposal on that, without trying to, you know, put it into a complete group of 2 buildings and move forward with something like that.
Thank you, Sal.
We have spent a considerable amount of time and money on this in the past 9 months, and that's why you see what you see today, and not just coming in with a presentation saying, I think I would like to go build on this piece of property. We know everything about this piece of property.
Sal?
Completely. We know everything from the contamination. We know about, you know, cleaning up the Killbrook. We know about retention basins. We know everything about this piece of property. So that's why we're asking to move forward, to give us the opportunity to get all the numbers together, negotiate a price, if that's what you're interested in doing, and then, you know, build this great site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the board, if Manny is impressed, the board recognizes that you have done a huge amount of work on this and appreciates that. I do think it's important that the board look at that old RFP, because if that's what you're answering, and it may well be, if we developed a new one, it would be identical to the old one, but we need to do this in rapid order, so that we can address this and the other company that's interested in it. No?
At the same time, it's important for us to engage the community at large in the process. How would you feel about doing some public meetings and talking about what you do with?
I think we're
with
jumping
them.
ahead right now.
Well, I'm saying if we went forward.
I think we're jumping ahead. And Sal, with all due respect, I appreciate you putting all that effort within the village. But also you have to understand that we on the board, we have to look at it, a bigger picture, not just on one property, and what is best for the village and what is best for the community as well. So, but when I said that the other developers are looking into this property as well, we have to look into that. And I think, and I believe, I will be taking in consideration in what is best for the village, not just what is best for one developer only.
I'm fully aware.
But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is an update on the Hudson Step application for the special permit. You had a public hearing at your last meeting, and I'll turn it over to council to introduce Bruce Lozito.
Before you do that, do I need to move away if I'm
Yeah.
confusing myself?
I was just going to say, before we start the process, trustee DeRisle is going to be recused on
I
this
have to
matter.
recuse myself and go sit over there.
Thank you. Okay, as you know, we had a public hearing last week, providing an opportunity for the public to comment. And just a brief reminder, the village board, this is the last step in the process. The village board is the approval agent, the approval board for the planned waterfront special permit. And that's what required the hearing, and that's what required this evening's deliberations. I didn't know, I asked Mr. Lozito to come, and Bruce Lozito is here tonight in advance of whatever deliberations he'll be doing tonight. I thought he could be available to answer any additional questions or address any concerns that you might have with regard to the project.
For people who are not aware of this project, could you very briefly,
Sure.
Bruce, or Lori, tell us what you're talking about?
Sure. Bruce Lozito is the representative from the developer. He's the attorney of record, so I will leave it to him to do a brief overview, and then you can ask any questions or address any concerns.
Thank you.
Evening.
Evening, Bruce.
I wish I could remember the presentation that you did at the public hearing, because that just capsulized everything very succinctly and very completely. But just briefly, it's for those who don't know the project, it's Hudson Step. We're here before the board for a special permit, which, if approved, would enable the planning board to grant a density bonus in return for us providing, as part of the project, various amenities and improvements that benefit the village, not just the project. And those things would include such things as affordable housing, off-site improvements, the complete restoration of the Smith Robinson House, and building to LEED standards to enhance the sustainability of the project, things of that nature. So we've been before the village for a couple of years now. In the last year and a half, most actively going through the SEQRA process, the environmental review process, with the planning board as the lead agency, who issued their findings in October, finding that the way we had designed the project and the mitigation we had proposed did address any adverse environmental impacts to the maximum extent feasible. They also recommended that your board approve the special permit to enable us to move forward. We also received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission for the work that we're going to do to Smith Robinson. And lastly, we received a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for a minor height variance in one of the buildings that we needed to make the site work, given its sloping condition. And we presented the project to your board at your last work session. It's 188 units on 5.9 acres in 3 multifamily buildings with a considerable amount of open space that the latest design achieved, with something in the order of 62% of the site being open space. And 4-story buildings, typically over a basement, with an architecture that blends into the community, that's new but also is reflective of the architecture that's around us. And I think we addressed all of the concerns that were raised by all the boards that we appeared before, and now we're hoping to take this step with you.
I think it's good to remind people that the height variance was not going up, but actually going down, because
Correct.
it's on a hillside, and they needed an extra floor for parking purposes, I guess. Are there any questions on the board? I think we've been over and over and
questions.
over
I don't
this.
believe anybody made any comments publicly at the meeting.
No.
Did we receive any comments?
No. There were no written comments submitted after the
Okay.
public hearing was
Yeah.
closed.
I mean, as I indicated at the hearing, you know, you've done so much hard work. The Smith Robinson House in particular is something that I'm very, very excited about. We have wonderful housing stock, and people are going to be able to see this building in a way that they've never seen it. So I'm very excited about your project, also the LEED certification, the infrastructure work, water, sewer, all that other stuff that we would have to pay for as a municipality. So I'm very pleased.
Yep. I think we all are.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because the term LEED certification, it indicates that they would actually be going through a process and getting approval from
Well,
the
not
state
getting the
agency.
LEED,
But
yeah.
you're doing it to the standards that
Right.
if you had wanted to move through that process.
Correct.
Yeah.
The only concern that I had, it was the finishes, type of finishes, but we have no control of that, so. Besides that, I'm okay with everything else.
The Architectural Review Board has something to say about that.
I've been watching this project for a very long time, as you know, and I'm very excited as well that it's actually going to come to fruition. I think the very idea that there will be people with disposable income in downtown, a significant number of those people will mean new commercial entities will come into downtown. I think that's really crucial. So thank you very much, and thank everyone. Thanks, Stefan.
Yes.
Maureen.
Okay,
sorry,
so
if I-
your process at this point, if you're satisfied with your questions and issues, your process at this point would be to determine whether you would want to move forward with an approval resolution. Your special permits section, Article 11, is very specific with a timeline. So it indicates that that you have 62 days after the close of the public hearing to render a decision. So you have enough time. If you needed anything further, you could push it off. But it seems as though that this has been thoroughly vetted, and it does need to go to the last step, because simultaneously with filing with you, they file with the planning board for their site development permit. So that's all happening together. And now that the findings are complete on the secret process, actual approvals can be rendered in the matter, and that's why they proceeded to the zoning board.
We need to do a resolution to approve the special permit.
That is correct. This is one of those narrow areas that the village board has retained the right to approve the special permits. So this is your
Is there anyone
section.
on the board who objects to providing that special permit?
I don't object. I regret that I didn't have a chance to follow up with the school district, because I know you'd had a conversation with them, and there had been some sort of, contribution made to them, and that is something I just want to understand from the school board, but I don't think that would preclude me from being supportive of moving forward, so.
So we could put a resolution on the agenda next
For
week.
next week? Okay.
Yep.
I can certainly draft that for you for the approval process. Just keep in mind that by your zoning code, special permits, Article 11 in Chapter 270, that any approval you give would have an 18 months sundown. So that gives the developer 18 months to move forward with issuance of a building permit. And once the building permit is issued, then that's preserved. The right to that is preserved.
And the developer is financially ready to move forward in less than 18 months?
Absolutely.
That was my
That's a good
question.
Much sooner than 18 months.
That was my question.
Well, the objective is actually to finish up with the planning board in the next couple of months. We can then apply for financing when we have our final approvals, and within something in the order of 90 days, 120 days after that, get our building permit and get going.
Good.
So I guess my question will be for Valerie. So Valerie, after the resolution, when is the next planning board meeting that they will have to go in?
December 19th.
Okay, so by December 19, so by January, if they have to tweak something else with the site plan, they'll have to come back in next year. So by March, you should be able to file by, how long do you think it will take you to see these? Well,
Probably, I think about 90 days,
okay.
something in that order.
All right.
Okay.
We have the lead aspect of it, which is a little bit,
I know, there's a lot of forms that you have to
less
fill out.
stuff. Not so much the forms, but getting the details in our drawings to make sure we're doing
Believe me,
it
when you start doing it, you're gonna see the details were a lot easier than filling out the forms.
All right,
Thank you,
so
Chris.
I'll prepare a
Yes.
resolution for next week.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you,
Thanks, Bruce.
Valerie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a discussion with respect to 200 Main Street, a request from the mayor to bring back to the board the opportunity or suggestion to proceed with another RFP for 200 Main. Mayor?
The board had determined, those of us who were in, yes, Bob can come back. Where is he?
No. Okay.
Somebody should find him.
Well,
I guess he can be easily found, but.
I would defer to your legal expertise on this. Okay.
I'm waiting for Bob. Hi, I'm sorry. I was still busy recusing.
back late last spring, those board members who had not recused themselves had determined that the best way to proceed with 200 Main Street was to go out for an RFP. So I asked that it be put on the agenda, so because there are still people interested in developing the building, that it be put on the agenda for developing an RFP. And I would like, again, to see the old RFP, to see whether we need to tweak that in whatever ways, and hope that we can bring it up at the next work session. Any comments?
Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any comments? Any commen
How fast can we get an RFP out?
Well, it depends upon whether we need to alter the old one. But if we don't need to alter the old one, we can get it out relatively quickly. Or even if we do, it can be altered once the board has determined what they want to do.
Because every day that we wait, the building deteriorates more and more, and I believe the speed at which the building deteriorates increases over time. So it's deteriorating more today than it did yesterday.
I think we can safely say, however, it's not going to fall down in the next month.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yes, exactly. So, Valerie, if you can dig that up for us, if you have it.
Valerie, do you know if it was the last RFP issued since the, since the comprehensive plan came out? So it's reflective of the comprehensive plan's
all
intentions?
three of these, because this also goes back to the old DPW site RFP. They were all last sent out in 2011.
Okay.
And they did include, if you recall, we had public workshops as to what the public, or general concepts that the public would like to see on all those various sites. So they also include those comments as well for both 200 Main Street, the old DPW site, and then it had for 147, 155 Main Street.
Thanks.
That's good.
So we will recirculate those. I think you'll find, I mean, there might be some tweaks here and there, but I think for the most part, you'll probably find that there's probably not too much that you'll need to alter.
So this
Good.
could be
That's
sent
good
out
news.
pretty rapidly.
Yes.
Great.
That makes us happy.
Everybody happy?
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah?
By all means, let's.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Valerie.
Okay, thank you. So we'll put that back on for the next work session agenda, and you can bring it up at that time. The next item is an update. We have a tax certiorari refund proposed resolution. I do not see the treasurer here.
Bill's
He's
not
not
here.
here.
Tom is at the
He's on
the
the
town
town
board
board.
Oh,
meeting.
Tom's at the town board meeting.
They have a budget hearing
Do you have
tonight.
that? Okay, I'll turn it over to council, then she can describe it in the treasurer's.
I don't have the file in front of me, but I can describe the matter. This is recently settled. As you know, the town's assessor takes on the process of the tax certiorari matters in litigation, and this was recently settled. This is 2 years. It's the 2 years prior to the sale of the property, which now is developed with the Stop and Shop. So this has to do with Erstad Biddle's ownership of the property for the tax years 2005 and 2006. So it will be 2 years of taxes for those 2 years prior to the sale to the current owners of the property.
And we don't have a say about it. We have to do this, right?
It is true that we adopt the assessment roll,
Yeah.
and we, as part of that, they provide services with regard to tax certiorari's. So
Right.
it is a fait accompli, as we like to say, and I have drafted a preliminary resolution. I just needed to bring it up to you and explain why it was these 2 years, because everybody will understand that Erstad Biddle no longer owns the property when
Okay.
you see the matter.
Got
I
it.
didn't
Do
want
you
you to
know
be
what the dollar
confused.
amount is?
I do not
It's
remember.
Yeah.
$59,040.85.
Oh, good.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes, 2
Next.
years.
Oh, it's on the.
It's actually
There it is.
3 years.
It is. It's, yeah,
Bill Hamilton's
for
not here.
5, 6, and 7.
Here, John.
And
Oh,
you-
it's on- okay,
you can
so
see
this
the
is on memo.
reductions.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, I have no problem with this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll put a resolution together then.
Thank you.
Yep.
And
Okay, we are awaiting the arrival of Deputy Corporation Counsel for the next item, so if we can skip to the item with respect to introductory local law number 5, the landlord registry law. Again, Corporation Counsel update you as to what you've done to date and what remains to be done.
Okay, as you know, we've had 3 evenings of this public hearing. We have also made an attempt to get the proposed actual registration form out to the public. You did conduct and close with finality your public hearing last week. No one appeared last week to add anything additional to the record. So you have what is considered a complete record before you. You can take your time There is no sundown procedure on this. You can take your time to review word for word the local law. You can make any changes necessary. I know there was some discussion about the amount of the fee for the registration form. There was some discussion through the record, as you know, with people who were adverse to having to provide this information on an annual basis. So there are many ways you can go and deliberate on the matter. And as part of that, we can promulgate the registration form as a rules and procedures, which you allow yourself in the local law to do. So that's where you are. The process is complete in terms of your public hearings, and now it's up for deliberations and for any discussions or revisions to the law.
Right. Does anybody want to talk about it?
Well, I guess the only thing I would say would be, I understand the I guess I would want the opportunity for the re-registration to be, in other words, if somebody, obviously, the first time around when we do this, it's going to be pretty taxing, on the building department and just getting it all done the first time. I think from an implementation perspective, I think we're going to have some time challenges just based on the how hard the building department works. I think the other part of the thing that I was thinking about on the re-registration was, if all the information that's on file is the same, that there is an expedited but verifiable way for the different property owners to quote unquote re-register in the second year. That I would want to see some kind of process that trust but verify. In other words, if it is all the same information for that owner, I'd want to do something in the most expeditious manner to make it possible for them, so they don't have to refile the same form over again, that sort of thing. I think this is an important piece of legislation. I think we need to, for the protection of the property owners and for the safety of the occupants and the safety of our first responders, that this is a very important piece of legislation, and I certainly support it. I think it's going to take time to get it all up and running, but that's really the only part of this that I have some concerns about.
I agree with John. I agree 100% with what you said about the importance of the law. I certainly agree that there should be a mechanism, a simple, possibly form that you can print out that says there are no changes from my original form filed on this date. Take it, have it notarized, and sent in. And perhaps the incentive being that there should be no fee if there's no change. That would be my suggestion.
Interesting idea.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. I'm really happy with this, and it's a first step in solving the problem of the illegal housing that's creating unsafe living conditions and putting our first responders at risk. And I'm very pleased that we're moving forward to address this issue.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Guess after a couple of different conversations that I had with different people, not just within the village, but other municipalities as well, and talking to different people and how the whole thing works, and just going back to what we talked about our budget. And don't get me wrong, by any means, I was one of the people who actually brought this idea to the board. But I have two major concerns, and those concerns is, one of them that was said in one of the public meetings that we had is like, what happens to the one-family properties where, it could be the possibility that they also have illegal apartments or illegal housing, so to speak. So we're not doing anything about that part of the sector of what the village has. The other thing that has been bothering me is one of the studies that we pays to do for us was the investigation of how our building and planning department works, and they came back and they said we needed people on the building department area. Now, by us doing this, and I know how much work it will take to get all the registrations from every single housing that we have here in the village. What does that do to our building department? And how do we enforce this at the other end Let's say we get all the stuff straightened out, everybody supports that idea, they come in with the application, we put it in a database. Now, if we have to enforce any of this, how do we do it if we don't have the staff? Is it gonna be another legislation that we just passed, is just gonna sit there and we're not gonna do anything about it? That's my major concerns. So even though I was one of them who brought this idea, I also think, and I also feel that we need to do something that will actually work for the goal that we want to accomplish, I think.
When you brought this idea forward, that was my main concern, is our department able to, our building department able to do this with the current staff, or do we need to increase the staff? And I still am very concerned about that, because the staff is working, I hope, full force at present, and if they are, how do we add this to their plate?
So I'm not saying we should not pass this law. What I'm saying is maybe we should just sit on it, think about what we're doing, and if we have to revise this, where it will take every single, if we have to add the one single family into this, maybe we should take a look at that. If we have to do something else, and how do we enforce this issue, if we even enforce this, or we only do when it's need to, that's something I guess we have to take a look at it, because as you know, we've been working on the budget and there's no money there to add another person to the building department
And
staff.
if we add single family to this, there's no question we would have to add staff because of the, 5,000 units, there are 14,000 housing units in the village, so that would be extremely difficult.
So those are my concerns. Don't get me wrong. I still support that idea. I think we need to do something about the legal apartments and how do we control it. But I think, the CO that we still have, that law is still pending out there, that we still have to look into it. Maybe that will be one of the solutions that we have. I don't know.
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I had a couple of thoughts. One, if we do a registration for every homeowner, not just the people who are landlords, and it's a simple registration, like if you do not have any rental units, then all you do is put your name and address, and you check the box that says no rental units, and then you sign it, notarize it, and send it in. The rest of it is irrelevant. But now what you've got is you've got a document signed by the homeowner and notarized saying that they're not renting out any part of their property. And then, if we subsequently find out they are, we now have evidence of a crime. Right? We now have, that's a piece of evidence. That's a good thing. At the same time, perhaps we should look at the fees where you don't pay a fee if you only are checking the box that says we're not renting anything out. So it doesn't cost anything. And if the forms were sent out with everybody's tax bill in the same envelope with a return, right? Do it in the same mailing. You got to mail to all those people anyway. Everybody gets one. And it goes out, and then it comes back.
Let's ask if that's legal.
Yeah, I do believe I recall there being a problem with including anything in with the tax bill. I can certainly look at the regs and get back to you on that. But there may be issues with including non-taxation bills with that
then
mailing.
We have the cost of envelopes and postage then. I was, that would be our increased cost to get the registration done at first, And then it seems to me that the follow-up only needs to be followed up as needed. Someone makes a complaint that Bob DeRio has 37 people living in his two-family house. Well, then they go and pull the form, and it says, well, Bob only has one rental apartment, and that only has 2 people living in it. Now it's probable cause, and, you can come and take me away.
I think the great thing is that we all recognize that it's very important that we address the overcrowded housing concerns that we all have for safety reasons, for the people who live there, for the first responders, for fairness of taxation and fairness of distribution of municipal services. We are absolutely all in agreement of that, and this is an effort to try and address that. The goal of this particular law, as I see it, is to make sure that we have a human being as a contact person for each piece of property, so that if there is a violation that's recognized by the building department, they have a human being that they can present with the code violation so that it can be followed up on. I'm not at all convinced that creating this huge level of bureaucracy that, from my understanding from Richard and your conversations with the building department, would be an expense to the building department. So doing it for free would greatly increase the time that the building department needs to spend on it without the money to do it. And I'm not convinced that the corporations that we have trouble getting the information from are going to be responsive to something that we don't have the time or money to be enforcing anyway. And I would be very interested to find out how often does this come up with the building department? Are we talking about once a year, 100 times a year? And is there an alternative way? Can we outsource to a private investigator when we've got a property? I know, Lori Lee, you often do a preliminary level of investigation, but is that something, what's the expense to hiring somebody to say, look, we've got these 5 properties, we don't know who owns them, find out who owns them because we need to charge them with a violation. And that does not create a level of bureaucracy for our property owners, 99% of which are not, they don't have anything to hide. And I think it is quite a burden on all the property owners to go out. I mean, we should all go out and get our notary stamp, because that's going to be big business here in the village if every property has to suddenly be notarized on an annual basis. I think that's a level of bureaucracy and a burden on the homeowners that does not provide enough benefit for us in achieving our goal, which is to find out who the real property owner is.
The A.L. Myers building was, as Bob will recall because he was very active in this, was a 3-year search?
3 years.
3-year search for the owner, going through corporation veil after corporation veil. So I'm not sure that it would provide us in those larger cases, or even smaller cases that were corporate ownership, with the owners. And to go after them, it took Lori Lee a great deal of her time. It took other people time as well.
Well, also with the attempt at service, you pay each time a process server goes to a temp service, and the Department of State records that we need to depend on to obtain the agent for service of process are not always accurate. And in the case of the owners of the property in question, those records were not accurate, didn't have an accurate contact information, it didn't have an accurate address. We were attempting to serve an address which was ancient. So they paid each time to do it. And, as you know, we ended up filing an action in order to get them to come to court. And
Yes.
they came here to settle the matter so we could dismiss the case at the Supreme Court. So the thought of having a sworn statement, I understand your misgivings about that, because we'll readily be getting sworn statements from individuals who we don't anticipate ever having a problem with. So there is a double-edged sword, and it's a fine line. But I'm not aware. I know that Trustee Quezada has spoken to Mount Kisco, and I believe that they feel their program is successful. They, of course, have about 1/4 of the units we do, but the fact is, they were getting responses, they were getting updates, and we could take another pass at this to see if we could make it less onerous, although we would run into equal protection issues if we limited it to the problematic buildings that we're aware of. We were trying to do this with an even hand. That, I can't be any clearer than that. We would open ourselves up to suggestions that we were violating the Constitution if we targeted people.
No, I've heard my fellow trustees, discuss their concerns about this, but, I think that we've spent a lot of time going through this, and obviously I think there needs to be more refinement. I think the notion of adding, single-family homes into this process is very onerous. It's going to be difficult enough just to have the 2-family, 3-family, 4-family, and up to get them to register and comply, much less to get involved with single-family homes. I do believe this is important. I do believe it's going to take a lot of time to roll it out, and I think we don't want to overburden the department. I hear the concerns about enforcement, but at the end of the day, Bob's point about the instrument is something that's very important. We have an instrument that's verified that says that this owner says that this is what they have, and we hear complaints from the public all the time about illegal housing and where it is and everything else. Well, listen, this is a nation that's based on property rights, and owners have the right to do things with their property within the law. And there are those that don't obey the law, and they think they can get away with it, and it causes a whole myriad of other problems that we've discussed, not only public health, but safety of our emergency workers and a lot of other things that are all of concern to us. So, I feel pretty strongly that we need to get this refined. We need to get this into a place where we can pass a piece of legislation. Is it the panacea? No, it's not. But I think we have to start somewhere, and I think the public needs to understand that this is important to us and we're willing to legislate to make something happen. So,
Lori Lee, I understand that the A.L. Myers building is a really big example of having trouble getting the information about who is the owner. How often does it come up that the building department is trying to issue a violation and they're not able to without a lot of research that is taking time away from you doing better things with your time?
I cannot quote to a percentage. I do know that it becomes increasingly difficult when the owner is a commercial entity because the research is difficult to do. And I also know that the assessor's records are not always current with reference to properties that may have changed hands by virtue of the death of the owner. I do know that very often family members are reluctant to file new deeds because there are ramifications to those deeds. So things are passing through families, not arm's length transactions, mind you. They're passing through families by virtue of a probated estate or a non-probated estate. It's really up to the family to go through the process of probating and to determining the value. So in some cases, we're left with records in the assessor's office, and that's as good as the records can be for us. And things are thrown out of the court because perhaps the record owner in the assessor's office is not the proper entity for purpose of service of process. So it happens, I would say, not on a majority of the cases, because in a majority of the cases, the defendants will come to court and answer charges. We do have to serve them in accordance with the civil procedure established in statute. We do actually have the village prosecutor here this evening. If he has some insight or input into the process of service of process, I would welcome any comments that he might have. And he would need to approach the...
Please, Bill.
This is Bill Hamilton, Deputy Corporation Counsel. He's primarily working as a village prosecutor on behalf of my department.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
It is an issue. On a percentage basis, I think I could say it is a substantial minority, somewhere between 5 but less than 15%. We had it today in court. A couple gets divorced. The divorce decree says the house is going to the wife, and those parties understand what's going on, but as is often the case, nobody bothered to actually file a new deed. So then we have a big fight in court about why is the second spouse brought into court. Well, we rely on the public records that are readily available, which is through our assessor's office. We do have one person who stands out, whose family has changed through death, and yet none of the property has moved on. We were stuck in 1943, perhaps in June of 43. And just suggesting that would be the
You're saying
approximate date.
perhaps in June, maybe February?
No, it's pretty much June. I just couldn't give you the exact day.
Oh, okay.
And for whatever reason, that really the owner of the property just isn't going to get it's got really nothing to do with the village. It's just he won't do the paperwork. You went through it to Pillow. Now, the flip side of it is the problem becomes that these people show up, keep their mouths shut because they're not the owners. We get about 80% through dealing with the case at hand, at which point they fess up. And, of course, the court immediately looks at me as if I've been concocting this conspiracy to prosecute innocent bystanders and then throws the case out because we don't have the right party. Again, DePillo is one of maybe three that are similar to that. But over the last, I've only been here since February, but what it's coming through, just because we have new cases coming in, the divorce situation is a problem, but not a huge problem. It's very quickly identified because the aggrieved party makes it very clear, I divorced that guy, and the house is his, and I haven't been here in 3 years, so why do I have to be here? You know, we can deal with that. Because of foreclosures or short sales, my position has always been, although the fights are getting a little bit nastier in court, your name's on the deed until the bank takes it off. I will continue the prosecution. Not probably on one level very political, I suppose, but I don't have it. I can't do any enforcement if someone walks in. And part of the problem with the local court, and it's not just our local court, whatever the homeowner says is pretty much taken at face value with no proof. So someone can walk in and say, I'm going through a short sale. Well, when are you going to close? I don't know. Well, that's good enough for us. When I ask for documents, I get the eyebrows, which are usually from the homeowner, like, oh, he asked for something. And they usually sort of fix the problem, meaning they just give up that argument. We have a lot of short sales going on. We have a bunch of foreclosures that on properties I wasn't even aware were in foreclosure, but we find out. And then if that sort of similar problem comes up, you know, post-service of charges in court, which is, well, then bring the paperwork. Well, the bank isn't actually foreclosing yet, but they called me last Monday to tell me that they're going to get to it. That's not a foreclosure. You know, verbal warnings, as far as I'm concerned, don't matter. As far as I think I walked midway through, so if I'm incorrect, what I think you were talking about is how do we have a database of owners that information on ownership is accurate. And I think maybe on day one, it'll be great. And then from every day forward, unless you have a staff dedicated only to protecting that database, like any other database, you're really going to find that the quality of the database is just going to fall apart. Whether or not someone's going to do a document subject to perjury, in my experience in 27 years, other than lawyers, judges, and a few cops that I used to work with, people don't understand what that means when they sign. They miss that whole thing about 1 year in jail. Miss it. It's right over their signature, and they're like, I didn't see it. I mean, it doesn't carry the force and effect among the uninitiated you hope it would. So I don't know as far as how to manage it. We deal with it every week, every Tuesday it comes up. And usually the resolution is pretty straightforward. We go back and try again. And we do have cases where we know, as far as we know, you know, Mr. Cobden was the owner. Yeah, well, actually, the property was sold. Well, then it should have been updated. Well, we didn't mean sale. He gave it to his brother. Well, you know, but we chase it down. It's inconvenient. It's not horribly inconvenient, but there are some weeks where it seems like every person standing up says the same thing.
Bill,
well,
who is the we chase it down?
Well, really the building department.
Building department.
I mean, they have a staff to do it. I think I would be in the weeds so quickly that I wouldn't be showing up on Tuesdays anymore in court.
They also have a process server, a company process server for the less than basic service of process. We have a service that we use and pay handsomely for the process.
And the other option, and I don't think we've had to use it too much, but if there's really a problem tracking down an owner, we can always order a title report or,
Yeah.
or run title. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say we're not ordering a title report, especially with if you have corporate shells that can keep popping up. You know, you pay them a fee. Usually, it's usually nominal, and they have somebody who goes through it and, you know, here are the 5 corporations in a stack that are involved. Doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but at least it gives you more information. And I know I've had to make arguments that I never thought I'd have to make about they've just admitted they own the property, but there's no paperwork. You know, and you know, part of it isn't, it's not just us. I mean, the burden is on us because we're prosecuting someone, but it's almost like proving a negative sometimes. You know, there's nothing for me I can't disprove or prove it. I haven't got a piece of paper from anybody.
Often I'll do the research preliminarily myself because we have a license to use the online records of the Westchester County. So I can pull up the basic information. I can see the last deed of record. I can see if anyone had an interest, financial interest or a lien on the property. And, you know, I do that kind of search because the building inspector, Al, will call me and say, we're frustrated by this. We don't know where to go, the assessor. And sometimes I'll call our title company and have them pull a report to see if the probate filing has been made. I mean, we grasp at all straws, and often I go next door and bother Tom and Dale and their staff to see who's paying the water bill, because that's usually an indication of somebody who has an interest in the property. So I go next door and do that. I pull the water bills. We pull out all the arrows in the quiver that we can possibly do to get these folks.
Yeah, some of this gets really silly. I know there was a case where there was a house that there was a violation against, and when they came to court, the woman explained that her father owned the house, and said, where is he? Well, he's dead. And they kicked it back, and then they filed against him again, knowing he was dead. So I suggested they bring the case before Judge Grass, because he's dead too.
Yeah, serving dead people doesn't work very well.
No.
And you're not going to get much compliance. It's just the way that goes.
No.
Today, actually, it's kind of strange. We had one divorce. Well, there purportedly was a divorce, so the ownership has been split, but the records haven't been changed because there's no new deed. The nature of a divorce, that's going to happen. We have a couple that has moved to Georgia. They're not coming back.
They abandoned it?
They walked away. And I'm more concerned about that, quite frankly, that, you know, these people, their backs are against the wall. They understand now they're going to lose a home, and there's an opportunity not here, somewhere else they're going. And we may end up in a situation where, you know, we're filing judgments and waiting for a short sale or an outright foreclosure. It would be a foreclosure, and take our money out of that closing if there are funds at the, you know, I mean, that's something down the road. But I'm seeing more of that. And that's only since February.
It's a long way.
So I guess the question is, in the instances where you are seeing this, for all the various reasons why it's difficult to track down who the actual owner is, would having this landlord registry law in place be helpful once in a while, often, most of the time? And we understand it's working in Mount Kisco. It's on the books in Port Chester, but they're not enforcing it. What happens in other municipalities? Do you have other
My sense of it is
prosecutors
this.
you've spoken with?
The problem people in that population will always be always be the problematic ones. I mean, I guess there's a rule. There must be X percentage who are just going to be difficult to deal with. As an example, the the Getty station on Bell Avenue is operating beyond the time it's allowed to operate. And I'm trying to think, they took Getty Realty, which is part of Getty Oil, took a multi-$1,000 judgment, which I believe they've missed payment on. That's another issue. It took us, between me and the building department, months to track down. We had the tenant, we had the landlord, and it turns out, well, it's actually Getty Realty. And Getty Realty would only admit their part in all this, and we got a criminal summons served on them. And that took months, because you don't just jump on a criminal summons. So as far as and again, I came midway through, I don't know what the expenses are, but I can tell you the building department, if this is now really more of an enforcement issue, you know, they're given a list. These people have registered. I'm not real sure. To me, they seem spread thin on some. on some enforcement, and that has been my experience. Because the flip side of it is the truly problematic properties, I would like, and I can't do it, ask that they do daily inspection, meaning that that property is now subject to daily fines. You cannot ask for daily fines unless you inspect every single day, or the days that you do inspect. We don't have the time for that. We really, I mean, I can't, in good conscience, ask Al, stop doing, because really what I'm saying is don't do new inspections. I want you to go back and redo ones you've done for the purpose, ultimately, of really just having a much larger fine imposed. And we have some landlords who aren't commercial, and they're single-family homes with 30 people in them, that will pay the fine because they're still making their money with the fines. There's one on Cedar Lane, Mr. Solis. When I was a judge, he paid $10,000, like that. Good for him.
Can we make the fines large enough that it's more onerous to pay the fine than to comply with the law, which is what fines should be doing? That's their job.
I think that's something for you to discuss. I mean, maybe what it comes down to is, I didn't mean to make a joke about the perjured statement, but that is a misdemeanor. I mean, that's DA territory. It wouldn't be something I would handle. Hopefully people just do what they're supposed to do, and we don't have to worry about that. But I don't know of any municipality that doesn't punish for the false filing. And you don't have to make that a misdemeanor. And then, of course, there's all the penalties that come after it, because now, of course, you're getting the mandatory inspection. And I think, in my experience, it's fair to say, if they're lying to you about the state of their property, it's almost a lock, not quite, that the building department would have a field day with what they're going to find. Because right off the bat, I mean, if the issue is illegal housing and overcrowding, it's nothing for people to rearrange an electrical system because they're going to now use their dirt basement as living space for their new tenants. That's a different thought pattern than I'm used to. I mean, I wouldn't use my dirt basement as rental property, but it happens. So compliance is through enforcement. I really like the idea of a registry. I really haven't been able to give it any thought as to how is it going to run and be effective. Certainly if you make the penalties, I hate to use the word, I don't know how else to say it, horrific, you might get better compliance, but that'll still leave you with that group of knuckleheads that are just effectively sticking their tongues out and say, catch me.
Well, we got to have penalties that allow us to lock them up. I am absolutely certain that we take six recalcitrant landlords and put them in a cell for 30 days with cheese sandwiches 3 times a day, that they'll stop doing it. You get some rich guy, pull him out of his Bentley, toss him in a cell. They're not used to that, and I think they'll stop. But the problem is we don't do it. We need to have the kind of enforcement that people go, what, are you out of your mind? And then they'll stop doing it.
I don't think we're talking about rich guys here.
No, you're going to find there aren't many Bentleys, unless their first name is Bentley, involved in this. You're going to find a lot of people that surprise you are baby slumlords.
Okay, well, put them in jail.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not, there's no cabal of
okay.
But it's highly motivated profiteers, to be honest.
Okay, well, I'm fairly certain anybody who says that prison is not a deterrent is wrong. Most people don't like to go there, and they certainly don't want to go there again once they've gone. And the problem we have is that we don't enforce the laws that we have, and we keep making new laws as if passing a law will solve a problem, and it's just a Band-Aid on a sucking chest wound. You've got to take your laws, and you have to have strict enforcement. Every community that I know about that's had a renaissance, Portchester, Beacon, come immediately to mind, and when you speak to their elected officials and their building department, they tell you that the main reason that renaissance has occurred is the result of strict enforcement of the local laws. And if we don't do it, then we really can't complain that the problem exists.
Well, I think that's part. Sorry,
Then we shouldn't be creating a law that we don't have the ability to enforce.
I agree completely. So we have to make the decision. Either we do this and give the law the teeth that it needs, and give the building department and the police department the resources to enforce the law, or we don't do it.
But then what we're focusing on is enforcing the law to make sure that every property owner who falls in this category, owns a two-family or higher, is completing the paperwork. And the reality is 99% of them are not criminals. They're not doing anything illegal. They're just property owners in our community that we're requiring to go to a notary annually to fill out a paper to say that, yeah, I still own the same property that I've owned in our community. And no other communities except for Mount Kisco are doing that. And are they enforcing it? What's the enforcement level in Mount Kisco?
They claim the program is a success.
That's pretty vague.
The extent of, that's the extent of the.
I'm not talking about locking up people for not filling out the form.
No, but it's a matter of, is it worth our time to hire another code enforcer or building inspector to be able to go through the bureaucracy and putting that level of bureaucracy when 99% of the people in our community are not in violation of it? We're just requiring them to go through more government red tape to just be property owners in Ossining?
But if we don't, now we have disparate treatment. And, we can't say that, well, Bob DeRio, he has a two-family house and he's got two families living in it. He shouldn't have to do anything. But this guy over there, this Hamilton guy, he's a little shady. So he's got to come out and fill out a form every year, and we're going to come to his house every year, but we're going to leave Bob alone because we know he's a good guy. It's disparate treatment. The inconvenience that the rest of the general public has to go through in order to stop aberrant behavior of the small percentage of people who create a danger, it's the price of living in a society.
Okay, then Lori Lee, you said that we can take our time on this. I think one thing that would be an important consideration is what sort of resources would be required for the building department and the police department to actually enforce this so that it actually is effective.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I agree with that.
How do we do the police? Because as far as my understanding is when the police department has to go or has been in a property and they see something that they believe is illegal, they usually contact the building department.
So there's no expense.
So
it's all building department then.
Pretty
That's
much. At the
fine.
end of
That's
the day,
fine.
it will be building department. So,
If I could, there is just one part of this equation. It's the prosecution part. You're not going to jail simply because you were violated on a property. And as in most local courts, the process, once the charges are filed and go into court, local courts have no legal authority to tell anyone what to do.
Huh?
Yeah. Local courts in New York State cannot order a property owner to comply with anything. However, they can impose a fine if we come to an agreement or there's a trial and they're found guilty. And if I ask for jail time after a trial or they plead guilty, they can be sentenced to some amount of jail time on certain charges. But they have no authority, unlike Supreme Court, where they can, based on the charges, say, Mr. Hanauer, you will, and then sort of go through the list of things to do. The expense for the village would be that, in one sense, we would move not all of our building department cases, but the most severe ones, which may from time to time be half the list, no C of O, no building permits, all into Supreme Court, because we need that judge who has the legal authority off the bench to say, you're going to do this before the trial. We can't do it locally. I can't do it in any local court. No local attorney can. It's worked because informally history has shown that that's the opposite happens. The judge looks at the homeowner and goes, are you crazy? I'm going to give you a month, fix it. And that it's not an order, but it isn't.
And what
Right.
what will that cost us to do?
Well, I couldn't put a dollar amount, but I can give you an idea in terms of what it would do to the building department. I go in and prosecute on Tuesdays. If I go to Supreme Court, this is a local court. Whatever I file in Supreme Court takes precedent over anything I'm doing locally. So let's assume I can keep things off Tuesdays, but if the lawyers have any brains, they'll constantly file motions for a Tuesday return, which pulls me out of this court and brings me into White Plains. But it also means I have to have the building department be with me.
Yeah.
So they're not here in this court. They're not here working. They're sitting around White Plains with me waiting to get in front of a judge. And frankly, I've asked other prosecutors how often they've gone to Supreme Court. It's a rarity. I mean, rarity. I asked the question that it takes them a few seconds to actually hear what I'm suggesting. Some of them just laugh outright, and the others go, well, I guess I could see it. So I couldn't put a dollar amount, but just from a resource point of view, you know, their weekly appearances, I'd be wiping out at least one full day.
Wow.
One day in addition to Tuesday. Because don't forget, you know, Tuesday they're already locked up here. So it's 2 days out of the week, or at least one day and at least half a day of no enforcement action whatsoever.
So that's what I was saying before. I think we need to understand how much time are we actually going to put and effort we're going to put to enforce this law. I have nothing to do and nothing against it that we should do this. It's just we don't have the manpower.
I understand.
We don't have the budget to do this.
I get it. Let me ask you a question. When a volunteer fireman one day soon goes into a burning building and finds himself stuck because they've divided this single-family home into 27 locked doors, and when he dies, will we have the time then? Will we have the money then? Because that's what's going to happen. The day's going to come when one of our cops, one of our firemen, one of our EMS people is going to be injured badly or killed because of the unsafe conditions that we're not enforcing because we don't have the money.
I don't think anyone disagrees with you, Bob, at all. What we are concerned with is we don't have the staff and the money to do it. And you can't bring up that example without also saying, okay, we're going to go over the cap and hire more people.
So
because that's the answer to that. More
Tom,
people.
Would you
plural.
come to the stand, please? How much money would it take the village to bring 2 more people to put in to build an apartment so it can help us with this issue? Would you have like an idea or a number in mind? Oh, Richard. Thank you, Tom. Sorry.
How much
Hire
does it
two
cost?
How
more
much
people.
money to hire 2 more people for the building department to do this to what we...
Yeah, two
Yeah.
more full-time people.
$100,000
I would
per
say
year.
150, at least 150,000.
Each.
Between, in total, between 150 and 200 between
So, Tom,
salary.
let's find $150,000 on this budget, please.
Yeah, we're,
Well, that's what we're
that's
trying
what
to
we're
say.
talking
That's
about.
what we're talking about.
I get it. So the question becomes, look, earlier tonight, I asked for $120,000 for a fireboat. I did. I can't, in all good conscience, ask for that if I can get $120,000 and use that to fund an extra person for the building department. And then, given that, we got to look at the rest of the budget and say, what else can we do without to keep the people of Ossining safe? Because that's what it's going to take. And we're going to have to do it at some point, because otherwise, some guy's going to get killed, and they're going to change the name of the village of Ossining to the village of Joe Smith when the lawsuit comes through and the village goes bankrupt paying it.
But-
You do what you want, but that's my take on it. I'm willing to cut the things I care about that aren't life-threatening, and I think we all need to. We have to pay for this. We have to get it done. We've got to keep the people safe. The biggest thing that the people of Ossining talk about whenever the people talk about stuff is this. They talk about the illegal housing, they talk about the overcrowding, and they talk about the danger to the first responders again and again.
and we all talk about it and acknowledge it and are very concerned about it on this board.
I know you
The
are.
question that is being raised tonight is this law going to be a significant help toward protecting our first responders, protecting the residents, protecting all the taxpayers? And I am still not convinced that this law is a path to really achieving that goal.
I appreciate that, and I
And
don't necessarily disagree.
Your comments tonight, though, are very incendiary and seem to be suggesting that the rest of us here on this board
No.
are raising, are not as concerned about the health and safety of our first responders, which is absolutely not true.
I absolutely, I contest that. I believe that this group of people on this board care about every single person sitting here, all of you, and myself, and our staff, care deeply about the people of Ossining. I think, though, that sometimes, because of the pressures that Albany puts on us, And it is Albany. You could thank Governor Cuomo for this conversation.
Well, it's also the
Because-
taxpayers who, need to be able to pay their taxes.
Well, but because of the pressures that are put on us by the unreasonable demands of New York State, by the refusal of our assembly people and our senators to act in Albany on our behalf, because of the constraints, we have to have these conversations and have to make choices like this. And in no way do I mean to denigrate how much you guys care about Ossining. This job we do, this trustee job, pays next to nothing. It's nothing but a heartache. You don't sit here, do this. You don't run for election and take these jobs if you don't care about the people of Ossining, because there isn't anything else in it for us. There's certainly no glamour. There's very little joy. This is hard work, tremendous hard work with very little return. So please do not think that I don't respect each and every one of you for doing what you do and as hard as you work. And I respect all of your families for all the heartache they have by not having you home with them. So please don't think that.
Okay.
If I feel passionate about this, it's because I do. But it's not because I think you guys don't care. Nobody cares more than you guys. It's such a privilege and an honor to serve with you, all of you. And I would not think for a moment that you guys don't care. Can I stop now?
Yes,
you can
please.
stop now. Thank
We
you.
got it.
Thank
We got
you
it.
very much. All right.
I think we just, I think we got some more work to do. I think we got to talk about it. I think this was very informative. I think Bill's comments were most informative for me. I think my conclusion from all this is that we're not making this painful enough when people do, when people have broken the law or are not complying, that we're not making it difficult enough for them. If somebody's willing to take a $10,000 fine because they're out of compliance and they're happy to pay the money, that's not good enough for me. Then we got to double it or triple it or whatever. I don't care what we have to do, but we have to make these people, obviously, and you also said, Bill, which is very pointed, talking about this is all about money. This is all about profit. This is all about squeezing money out of people that are disadvantaged and uneducated and really don't know where else to go. And that's abhorrent. It's immoral. So maybe we need to hit them in their pocketbooks, and that's for another discussion. But
A number of years ago, the then building inspector came to us and asked us to increase the fine significantly, which we did, and it helped for a week until the same people realized that it's just the cost of doing business. So it's gotten a lot worse since then. Okay, so back to the drawing board on this one?
Well, not the drawing board, but yes.
Thank
for
you.
further, we'll put it on another work session,
Yeah.
maybe in January.
January.
Jesus.
Okay, amendments to the ethics procedures.
Right, so the Ethics Board had made some recommendations recently that the Village Board look at the existing ethics code and how it's being implemented, and had made certain suggestions of things that might be looked at since it was first implemented several years ago. So Bill Hamilton is here this evening to speak to the board about that and to answer any questions specifically on 4 specific recommendations that were made.
Good evening.
Evening. It's nice to see you again.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Love what you've done with the tie. I've spoken to some of you with regard to the recommendations on page 11 of the Board of Ethics decision, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Some of these, I believe, Richard, we'd had a discussion when the decision first came out regarding having the ethics code provisions actually included in the village code on the internet. So just like our village code is accessible via the web, now the ethics code is actually available to the public in the same way. I had also suggested, I think it's been done, that when we wrote the code initially, although the internet did exist back then, we really weren't focused on things like social media or using the internet for anything or electronic filing. But the good news is, with regard to electronic filing, I would suggest that what we do is we give the Board of Ethics its own mailbox, just like every other employee has and department has. Have that included somewhere, I don't know, whatever the design would be. I don't do web design. That email account, that password would only be the Board of Ethics password. They'd be the only ones capable of going in, which is nearly as perfect as you can get with regard to the issue of how do complaints come in, how do they stay confidential and make it from the person basically dropping the envelope off to the Board of Ethics with there being no real interruption, which is a very polite way of saying that whatever the allegations, information, questions, the identities of people, isn't disclosed to anyone until the Board of Ethics opens the envelope and actually goes through whatever may be in the envelope. I would suggest that, Rich, I don't know if it's been done, but I would suggest you give some thought to that. I think, especially in this day and age, I can't remember the last time I wrote a check to pay a bill, like most people. Why would I bother? I go online and just deal with it. And I think while it doesn't give our entire population access to the Board of Ethics, I think it gives a substantial part of our population. And I think as time goes on, you know, that the group that doesn't have internet access, I would think would be somewhat smaller. But it's certainly, it's cost-free. I don't know, well, maybe Craig's 8 seconds of programming will cost some money, but that's it. Once it's done, it's done. And, you know, as that board changes, that new board at any time can change the password so that security stays. It's really between the sender and the receiver.
Can I clarify one point
Sure.
in the beginning? The Code of Ethics has always been available in our general code. What has not been available online, and perhaps it is now, but is the Rules of Procedure. So
I'm sorry, I should have made that clear.
Yeah.
Both the procedure and the code itself, I agree with this, ought to be part of the village code that is part of our website. Because if only the code without the rules of procedure are included, no one other than maybe me or Al Mendez would be able to say, well, what you need to do now, because we know what the public's not going to know it. And that sort of defeats the whole purpose of the confidentiality, which really is spelled out in the rules and procedures.
Right.
I mean, the code may mention it, but doesn't tell you how to do that part.
Richard, do you know if the Rules of Procedure have been added yet?
I thought they have, and I'll check with
I haven't
Craig.
checked, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
check with Craig.
Christina, I think you added them.
Check, we'll verify.
Okay.
Continue. So I think that takes care of the only question I have, and I have had a couple of conversations with Mr. Mendez. I'm not sure what I'm sorry, he's referring to the code and the rules of procedure. I had misread it at one point thinking it would be decisions. Decisions are never made public. That's not what the Board of Ethics only exists as an extension of this board's authority. It's this board that decides what happens with a decision once it's written. And that procedure is already in place with what we wrote originally. I really think that should cover 3, 4, and 5. 6. I can tell you, Richard, Al, and I, when we were working on rewriting the code in 07, 06, I kind of forget when we did it, we never discussed social media. It just wasn't an issue. I don't know how things have changed so much, but it really just wasn't an issue. And it really wouldn't have been. The more I thought about it and sort of brought myself back up to speed on social media employment issues, because typically social media guidelines are in the employee handbook. They're not, there could be a cross-reference to a code of ethics, but they usually stand alone. Different industries have different legal requirements, and it needs to be very explicit. And the people in a corporation who might deal with ethical considerations may have absolutely no contact with the HR director who's managing the employee handbook and making sure that when there's changes made, every employee's signature page makes it back into their personnel jacket. So if there's a violation, something can be done about it. Having said that, Rich and I spoke very briefly about this. I did not have the time to actually track down what our social media guidelines are. My sense of it is that what we most likely have is internet use policy, which is where this all really started for everybody. Because social media, nobody saw it much other than, well, this is sort of fun, until they were the butt of the joke, and then it wasn't fun anymore. I have really sort of, I guess, copies of 4 somewhat generic social media guidelines. And it really comes down to this, because this is more of an employer-employee rule issue. Confidential information. Some companies say anything you do at work is confidential. If for some reason you blog it, you're fired. Disparagement of supervisors or the corporate entity or the municipal entity, you're fired. There's a pattern here, by the way. Break the rule, and it's a straight line in the decision tree down to termination. Not in all companies, but in most. And if looking at when a lot of these social media rules were drafted by these, I think I have 1 or 2 municipal corporations, they read exactly what they mean to. It's a result of something happening on social media that woke them up. They either didn't like it or didn't understand it and how to address it, or they were sued because somebody told their employee, I saw you on Facebook last night and I don't like what you said, so you're fired. And the guy may have been talking about how to deep fry fish for all I know. The guidelines go both ways. The guidelines are to protect the employer from litigation on a termination. But it's also to set the rules, just like an employee handbook is supposed to. This is what we expect you to do, whatever your work week is. But I think what's come out from social media is the astonishing amount of information that comes out about the business side of the world when people are just commenting about their workday, or commenting about their boss, or commenting about a decision made. And that, for some companies, especially the tech firms, can be a bit of a shock. That top secret project that they were about to announce because their stock price needs to go up is now on Facebook 3 days before the announcement. There's a pattern there too. I don't know. In the conversations I did have with a few of you, we didn't really chase down what the board would be interested in, but I think it might be fruitful to see what our current policy is, and does it meet your concerns, and if it doesn't, then those concerns really get converted into language, and then a decision is made whether that should be included in the employee handbook or personnel rules. And as far as the code of ethics is concerned, I think it's more of a cross-reference or an incorporation by reference of those rules. Because you can call it an ethical violation, although if it's the violation of a work rule, ethics has nothing to do with it at that point. And to give this sort of free legal advice for what it's worth, in those situations with a problematic employee, you want the issue to be very clear if a personnel decision is made. In the event that there is litigation, you're not going to hear, well, you just confused them. It's not his fault or her fault that she did this. Well, no, it's a black and white rule. The rule should be simple. They should be unbelievably clear. Because it's, at least in my experience, social media has taken off. Who reads newspapers anymore? It's blogs and other channels of information.
And you're saying that there are employee handbook guidelines where if somebody tweets something along that's in violation of the guidelines, someone could be fired? Wouldn't that be kind of a problem with A, elected officials, and B, union members?
Well, union members actually, there are untold cases, mostly out of law enforcement, civil servants, who would, let's say, blog just to cover the social media about a particular lieutenant or chief and what they thought of them, and they would be disparaging comments, and they were fired. Federal courts have held not protected speech. And that's where the line gets drawn. As long as the rule is reasonable to your employment, then the First Amendment isn't impacted. Where it is impacted is if the social media guidelines say beyond the scope of the employment, whether you're a politician or an employee, you can't talk about issues in I'm being vague for a reason, but issues in controversy. Well, one, I haven't got to really put a clue what that means, but how would you enforce it? Well, that's one of those rules that gets enforced when someone doesn't like what you said. And that's not the same thing as giving up confidential information or disparaging a supervisor. That's the complainer saying, well, I don't like what you said, so you're fired, and you're fired because I don't like what you said. Well, wait a minute. It's got nothing to do with social media. You just don't like what's being said. The fact that it came through social media is irrelevant. It could have come out in an article, it could have come out in a letter. There are First Amendment issues. Someone certainly could try to use social media policies or employment rules, to stifle otherwise legitimate speech. And that will get you nowhere, except probably a whole lot of litigation. I mean, I think my reading of it is the social media policies that are adopted generally really go to, look, we understand you have a personal life, and that's none of our business. Here's the sandbox that we're going to stay in when it comes to the business side of the equation. And the federal cases, they're almost uniformly short and to the point. You certainly had the right to say anything you wanted to say. And I'm thinking of 2 Florida sheriffs who didn't like their chiefs and were unemployed as a result of comments they made on Facebook. And the court made it clear you can have your beliefs, but what you've done is you've taken what is a clear employment rule and try to convert it to a First Amendment. Politicians are, don't take this the wrong way, but you're a weird group. You know, you're not employees in the sense that I'm speaking of. You can't be fired. You have to be removed from office. And that process in New York State is, as it should be, extraordinarily difficult. You were elected by voters, not by a committee. And while there can be a corporate policy for the politicians, you folks representing the people and the corporate entity, with regard to, say, confidentiality. You know, if you have a business meeting regarding the terms of an RFP, that's probably not a good thing to go blog on before a decision's been made. But comments about social issues, comment that you guys are dealing with, I think you'd have a really hard time justifying cutting that language out. Because while you are elected officials, that you didn't stop being citizens. You didn't lose your rights going through the door. I left one thing out. On the federal cases that I did read, particularly with these 2 sheriffs, there are certain rights that get limited depending on what your job is. And given the number of federal cases involving law enforcement personnel, that is one career path. You need to be real careful about how you socially use media. Because west of the Macon-Dixon line, it's grim. And I know coming out of New York City, I had 3 cases that involved some very weird blog, and having that heavily protected union employee, because New York's a pretty union city, having him terminated was no more difficult than having anyone else terminated. The law wasn't on his side, even in a city where unions pretty much do fairly well when it comes to workplace rules.
Then the only one that I'm not sure that we spoke on is regarding having a training with the Board of Ethics.
Right.
Number 4.
We had discussed this. I know Miguel, Bill, I think he's the only one who remembers that. But Miguel's one of the when Al and I were put on the board with Richard and discussing writing a new code, Miguel Hernandez made a point in his mind that the whole point of the Board of Ethics was to do the ethics training for the village. It just didn't happen. But I know he had voiced in several work sessions that we had with you guys that was, in his mind, the whole point. You know, we're going to have a new updated code, and we're going to have a committee, a board, and they're going to be the ones that not only answer questions that will come up, but also be proactively do training. I think, I'm sure the HR department does all sorts of training, and it certainly, I think, could be worked into, and I don't know what the schedule would be, but like any other corporation, at least in my experience with my clients, if there is ethic, they don't have codes, of course, rules of conduct to translate, that's usually added into, you know, is it an EOC training, is it sex discrimination, whatever the big topic is, it usually is added on as another topic.
We don't get to
Or-
go to that. We don't get to go to any of that stuff. So there needs to be some kind of training for sitting and prospective board members so that the problems that came up for this board don't come up for anybody else ever again. You know, we need to look at what happened, not with an eye towards blame, but rather with an eye towards how do we stop these kinds of mistakes from happening again, because they're hurtful and they're detrimental to the good working of local government.
It would probably be very useful if there were an annual program, as we have had at GE or somewhere, where this was one of the sessions, where someone from the board came, someone from that board came to speak to this board, particularly since there are new people on the board from time to time.
Absolutely. And while ethics isn't going to win any Academy Awards for being the most exciting film out this year or any year, the law and ethics changes, but because it really is a backwater in some ways, and some of the changes really are quite important. What may have been deemed ethical behavior 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, Sarbanes-Oxley now says is a crime. Well, a whole generation of executives sat around the table, I'm sure, said, what do we do now? Well, you're going to have to learn a new way of doing what you did before. And, you know, you're all in the public eye no matter what. Go food shopping, go do your laundry, get your car fixed. You know, it's never off for you. It's not the guy at the GM building who can go out the back door Monday through Friday. No one knows who we do. So the last thing you want to find out is that 2 weeks before something was done by the board, guess what? Well, there's a big fat case that came out of wherever that says this can't happen. So I don't know, like an annual February meeting update. The other thing that was discussed, and it was discussed on really as a more along the lines of how like legal CLE is done, which is the board of ethics maybe every quarter does an update. And there aren't so many changes that it's that onerous. I mean, it's actually with computer research now, you can pretty much have it tell you need to read me, something new came in. But certainly the board and senior management, or just the board and senior management stays with the employee pool. I know we discussed it 7, 8, 9 years ago. Whenever we actually were working on it.
2006.
It was. I don't know why I kept getting locked on 6 of us. And as dry as ethics can be, and it can be very dry, you certainly don't have to have the training cover every conceivable issue faced by anyone. It's an impossibility. I know, going back to when we were working on the new code, the situation that arose recently, as far as we got in our conversations with all the permutations of what we thought might happen, that wasn't one of them. Not once did we ever have anything close to a conversation of the situation that arose. So, yeah, in that sense, maybe the code's got some gaps in it. Oddly enough, John Mancini, we had lots of discussions back and forth.
John Mancini is from NICOM.
I'm
This
sorry.
is his area of
I
specialty.
apologize, yes.
Yeah, just want to focus on that.
He's the guru on municipal ethics. That's a good thing, I guess. He sent me his prototype code that he would hand out. A municipality came to him in the meeting and said, we don't have a code of ethics, what should we write? You know, write this. And I compared it to ours, and other than a social media paragraph, you know, it doesn't change that much. You know, it really, like any other law that is fairly straightforward, it only changes when a situation occurs. I go, didn't think of that. Well, what are we going to do? One, do we need to do anything about it? If we're going to act, you know, you want to act to address a possibility, and keeping it simple. We don't want it to look like the IRS code after a few years, where even the Board of Ethics is scratching its head, going, I'm not sure where we go with this. So that may, again, sort of flipping back to the social media, that may belong, I believe, really does belong more correctly with the HR director's office, because that is something then that will have to be monitored as time goes on to make sure that there actually is compliance among employees. And the simple fix for the Code of Ethics is just incorporate it by reference or just cross-reference it. You know, because we do have some prescriptions already built into the code, you just add that. I mean, we do this, you guys do this in the code all the time, where you cross-reference to another completely different code. I mean, I know in the building code you do it. And that puts everyone on notice.
Good. Thank you.
I think we've got something.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much,
As much
Bill.
fun as fire boats.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Bill, for your time. Appreciate it. More conversations will take place. Next item is a update on introductory law number 6, amendment to Chapter 68, Alcoholic Beverage Corporation Council.
Hey, as you know, we held a public hearing last week on this, providing an opportunity for public comment. We received nothing that evening, and I have received nothing subsequent to that in writing. So you are ready to deliberate on this and to decide if there are any impediments to moving forward. If you choose to move forward, we can have this resolution on for adoption as early as next week, and then we'd have to send it up for filing. It will have to come out with a different number because it will become local law number 5. It was proposed local law number 6, but it's now stepping over the other local law number 5, which we are tabling. So just so you don't get confused when it shows up on the...
Okay.
I don't know, can that work? I don't know.
You can handle changing 6 to 5 and 5 to 6?
It is,
We'll see
may
how it
have
goes.
Anyone have any problems with this?
It will be confusing
That's
to
the
you.
most controversial thing we
It
do.
is introductory local law 6, but it will become local law number 5.
All right.
That's
A
good.
Mambo number 5.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. The last item on the public section of the meeting this evening, just sort of an update and really looking for your input and the direction that you would like to go in on this. We had advertised for a number of volunteer positions with the village on a number of different committees. We were fortunate that we were able to get a pretty good applicant pool, a lot of interest shown in village participation. I just wanted to sort of mention a couple things that I mentioned last week and then throw it to you all in terms of your thoughts. With respect to the zoning board, the landlord, tenant, and the ambulance committee, we're continuing to advertise because we got limited response to those. In some cases, we got 1 or 2 responses, so you may want to go through the applicant process, however you determine to proceed. We have, for the downtown committee, we have 4 applicants. For the environmental council, we had 2. For the arts council, we had 11. And for the planning board, I don't have the number right here, but I would say probably 6 or 7.
Great.
And the landlord tenant, you have 1. So basically, we're eager to seek your input because we have all this interest. We'd like to move forward to vetting the people as you deem appropriate and trying to get some of these people to serve us. So I'll just turn it over to the chair and then to the board, however you like to proceed.
We have traditionally had 2 members of the board work with interviews and advise the rest of the board. In this case, Richard suggested last week that we also have members of the administration who would be directly involved with those people, like Valerie with planning and zoning, and Ingrid with downtown and the like. Bob, you suggested last week that everybody get involved in everything. Nothing will ever happen if you do that. You'll never have an agreement because you'll never be able to get through the interviews. So I suggest that we continue going the way we have been going with the addition of administrative people. Since those 3 are very small numbers of people, I think we continue to advertise, but maybe up the ante some. I'm not sure how to do that, but it seems that certainly the zoning board, which is really crucial, we've got to get it out there that we need people on the zoning board. The others nothing is unimportant, but the zoning board and the planning board are the big entities that we really have to deal with. So the planning board is the big one, since the zoning board is now put on hold for a moment because there are 6 or 7 applicants. I've seen a couple of resumes that came in very early when there were only 2. I haven't looked at the others since then. But I think we need to immediately start interviewing for the planning board. And the Arts Council is sort of interesting because we announced that such a thing would happen, and all of a sudden we've got 11 interested parties. You made a point, Bob, which I think I had also made. We can't have 4 people from one organization and 3 people from another. We have to leave it open to a larger field of people. So maybe we should all see all of the resumes, but divide up the actual interviews. What do you think?
Yeah, I think on the Arts Council, I think there's a lot of different kinds of arts, and there are a lot of arts organizations. I think that we should make sure that we have the widest diversity, so that there are music people and theater people and visual artists and all the different kinds, poets. The concern I have on this list is there are a couple of groups that have many multiples of people. And I think that we shouldn't have more than one person from any specific arts organization on the thing.
Right.
So that was the only concern I had there. I think that I respect your position that the whole board shouldn't be involved in all of it, but I think that the whole board should see all the resumes and be able to comment on them. And that's what we have done. So he addressed my concern that everybody on the board had a say without having to make the interview process cumbersome. So thank you for that, Bill.
The environmental one, again, there are only 2 people. My concern there is that the student may be graduating.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a student anymore.
Well, it's okay if he doesn't go to college in Oshkosh.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's okay if he only serves for a little while, because there's plenty of seats right now. If he's, we spoke with him, right? It's one. Is that one of the gentlemen we interviewed? Right. Yeah.
So you.
So do you want to appoint him, basically? I mean, is there consensus, or do we have...
Well, we had interviewed him, and we should probably talk about that offline. But
you guys liked him,
I
right?
seem to recall that, yes, he was a very good candidate.
Yeah.
He was fine.
Yeah.
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 So? Okay, appoint him.
Next.
Check.
That was easy.
There's only 25 other people to interview, so.
There's other seats, and there's only one other person who's applied.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then, Christina, you would be organizing some interviews for folks?
Arts? Who wants to deal with arts?
I'd like to do that.
Okay.
Anybody want to do it with
Two
me?
artsy types?
Yeah, what are the what?
Yeah, you and I?
Yeah.
Is that okay with everybody else?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay, so Bill and I will do that.
What else do we have? We've got the planning board, and we've got something that starts with a D that I can't read.
Development.
Development. Yeah, downtown. That's what.
Manny, I think you should do it.
Manny, you should do it, and John, why don't you
Yeah,
do it with him?
I think that's that.
And planning board,
What
Victoria,
yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to be part of that.
and with me.
I think that would be excellent.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, so
Is that it?
yeah, looks like.
Hot damn! Look at that. We're only
We're just
we're
almost on time.
only 5 minutes behind schedule.
That's quite remarkable, considering all that happened tonight.
Yes.
All right, great. So I believe that's the last item on the agenda. You have attached resolutions for next week, including the approval of the 2015 final budget.
Right.
So if I turn it back to the chair for a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing personnel-specific persons.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
This ends the televised portion of this evening's agenda. I want to remind everyone to be very, very careful when you're traveling, if you're traveling, to look in on aged or infirmed or families with young children to make sure that they are safe, warm, and have food. And something to drink for this holiday, not necessarily alcoholic, preferably not in the case of anyone under 21.
Driving.
Be very careful and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. See you next week at the legislative session on Wednesday evening at 7:30 at the courthouse. Very important session. It's a session in which, among other things, we adopt the budget for 2015. Have a good week.